Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to tell you about this podcast. It's called The DK Project, but it's really The Darren Show. The DK Project is a radio show, but without the radio. So sit back, buckle up, and enjoy the ride.
Let's go! Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the DK Project. Zooming in today, we've got David Bigalow, Mr. Jaws. He is working on a project to bring back Jaws. They are redoing some stuff, 45th anniversary coming up. It's kind of a big deal, and we sit down and talk with them a little bit about what's going on and what kind of things they're up to. It's a really interesting podcast because Jaws is a major cult phenomenon where people love that show, man. It's a big deal. So we zoomed for a while and got the lowdown on what's been happening. And this is actually somewhat of a two-parter. We've got another Jaws episode coming right after this with the set designer for Jaws, which is also a very interesting podcast. But for right now, let's see what David Bigalow has to say. Welcome, fans. How you doing today, David?
Darren, thanks again for having me on the show. It's really exciting to be able to talk with your listeners about what we're up to. So my name is David Bigalow, as Darren has said, and I am basically working on a project that involves Jaws, everybody's favorite summer film. Love it or hate it, be afraid of it or just enjoy the film. I think we all acknowledge that Jaws is one of these timeless classics that every year in the summertime, there's no ignoring the fact that people talk about Jaws and
Shark
go see
Week,
Jaws,
baby.
And it doesn't go away. There's no going away of Jaws. I mean, it's incredible after 45 years to see a film hold on so tenaciously.
I can't believe it's that long. 45 years?
Yeah.
So now you were in the
years.
movie. They probably don't recognize you because you've aged a skosh. Not a lot, little. Just a little.
Just a bit. I got a better haircut. I was a kid in 1904 on Martha's Vineyard. I had just moved there in 73. And in 1974, the Universal Studios showed up and stormed Martha's Vineyard and began working on Jaws.
So was it just an open casting call, or how did you get in?
Well, it was Jaws was really a collaboration between Hollywood and local townspeople of Martha's Vineyard. And a lot of the casting calls that were done were for some speaking roles, which usually when you cast locally and in a location like, if you go to Boston or New York or any of these things, you cast extras. You cast people in the speaking roles through formal auditions and so forth. Right. You cast extras. You go to the Martha's Vineyard, the people who were fishermen. You go to the people who were beachgoers. You go to townspeople. And so they work with a lot of people who are basically just playing their jobs. For example, Robert Nevin played the medical examiner, and he was the actual doctor in Edgartown at the time. So
how cool is that?
They used a real doctor to play a doctor. Go figure. How does that work?
Well, Martha's Vineyard's not that big, is it? What's the actual size? I haven't been to Martha's Vineyard. I've been to Cape Cod, but I never made it out to the island. How big? That's not very big, is it?
The island is about 126 square miles, but that's including a lot of area that is not habitable. It's all forest and so forth. There's about 4 towns per se that have people in them, congregated and living in them. Oak Bluffs, where I grew up, is one of the most populated towns, and Edgartown, which is where a lot of the film was shot, and a lot of people do. You can find plenty of people in town. But at the time, Jaws was coming around when the Vineyard was not the famous place it is today. We didn't have presidents coming. We didn't have Clinton yet or Obama yet or any of the famous people, Spike Lee, showing up on Martha's Vineyard. It was kind of a little bit of a secret in the Northeast and wasn't really popular yet.
And you were born there and grew up there, and it was just a normal place for you. It wasn't obviously what it is now, but Did they when they filmed Jaws there, did that start to put it on the map? I mean, I got to think that because obviously everything that I know about Martha's Vineyard, it's quite the place to be. But you were there before it was the hoity-toity location it is now, or is it even? I guess that's just what I think. I don't. Tell us what its current status is.
Well, currently Martha's Vineyard is exactly what saying it is. It's a hoity-toity, destination vacation location that, people from all over the world will come to. Very often New Yorkers, New Jerseyers, Connecticut people, they come pretty frequently. Back in the day, the only thing that Martha's Vineyard was known for when I was growing up there before was the Ted Kennedy Dyke Bridge incident.
Ooh.
When the car went off the bridge.
Was that Chappaqua
and that young
or something?
woman, yeah, Chappaquiddick. So Chappaquiddick, I believe, happened in.
So the Chappaquiddick thing happened in what, like 70 something?
72 or 73. Ted Kennedy's car went off the Dyke Bridge in Chappaquiddick, and so the world became more and more aware of Martha's Vineyard. It was a resort destination for people like Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather. There seemed to be a large gathering of people who were somewhat famous. Carly Simon still lives there to this day. She was living there back in the heyday of her career.
Are you still living there?
Are you still there? I'm in Boston now. And but an hour and 15-minute drive, and I'm down there pretty consistently these days.
Is there an airport on Martha's Vineyard?
There is an airport on the vineyard. I've never flown to the island. I've always ferry. Maybe someday I'll experience what it's like to fly there.
Because there's a ferry out of Cape Cod, isn't there?
There's a what?
Is there a ferry off of Cape Cod? How do you get there?
Yeah, so you can drive to Falmouth, where Woods Hole is, and that's a 45-minute ferry ride to the island. So pretty convenient, and also it's kind of a nice little ride compared to flying in. I would think. I do a great deal of taking the ferry, and it's kind of like that first 45-minute ferry ride. You're already on the island. It's kind of the magic carpet that gets you there.
Ah, nice. And you and so you were an extra on the film, and then did you pursue acting, or what did you do after that? I mean, you were little, but your parents had to kind of get a taste of it and go, "Hey, this might be cool, but we live on an island." So what do you do?
Yeah, there wasn't much of an aspiration for acting for me. I enjoyed the opportunity to be in the film. I enjoy the fact that Lee Fierro, who plays Mrs. Kintner, the one who slaps Roy Scheider's character in that scene on the dock after the boy is killed on the yellow raft at the beach, that was my drama teacher.
Oh, wow.
And in elementary school. So that's how I got to know about the film, was she told us some kids to come down to the beach and be in the scene where she was starring in. I had no idea that scene involved a young 12-year-old boy being, eaten alive on the beach right in front of me. And so it was, other than that, it was very cold. It was late April, early May. I can't remember exactly the date, but the water was not warm yet. On Martha's Vineyard, the water doesn't really start to warm up in the North Atlantic until probably mid-June, and this was early in the season. So we were paid, I think it was $50 a day to be extras running in and out of the water. And a lot of people felt they really earned it by the end of that day.
What do they pay, like the local, like your teacher and the medic guy? Did they pay them like normal money?
They paid them. So a speaking role, much more money for doing if you're going to be actually speaking dialogue. Extras get paid a certain amount just to show up in the background of the shots. So we all got the low money, and Lee got the much better money. And then guys like Robert Shaw and Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss all got the really good money.
Yeah, right. Did you get to meet any of those guys? I mean, as a kid, it's probably not as big a deal.
I saw them on the beach. Of course, Roy Scheider was there for his, he had that famous dolly zoom shot where it's like right after the boy is eaten, you get to go shot the dolly zoom. Okay, great.
So when they were filming the movie and they came to the island, how long were they there? Like, how long does this process take?
So the process was supposed to take 55 days. Universal Pictures scheduled 55 days on Martha's Vineyard to shoot Jaws. The reality is that they went for 159 days. So they were there basically about 6 months getting the whole film shot. There was a variety of reasons for that. A lot of people believe that the shark not working was the main reason that the film went as long as it did. The truth is that the shark was just one of the issues that the filmmakers were dealing with: the weather, the ocean, the locals, the unpredictability, basically, of filmmaking in a non-controlled situation, such as on an island where people live. Was basically, the be-all, end-all of being able to have a schedule held to. So they were shooting that film, and they were shooting the film, and they shot everything on the land they could before all the tourism started up for the summer.
When
so they shot as much as they could.
When does that usually start? Like June?
Yeah, so Memorial Day weekend is typically the opening of the season.
Okay.
But usually people start to show up, en masse on the vineyard mid-June. July 4th weekend is obviously a huge time.
Sure.
And so from July until Labor Day is pretty much the prime season. So the land shooting for Jaws took place over many weeks until they basically were forced onto the ocean, and they tried to get everything in the shot for the land scenes for a number of reasons, including the shark wasn't working, which everybody is familiar with, that, that was one of these things they couldn't get around. So, but that gave them time to work on the shark. Robert Matty and Roy Arbogast and Cal Accord and all these others that were special effects people had all this time while they were shooting the land sequences to get the sharks into shape and be ready for camera. When they got to the ocean for the last half of that film, they spent 20 weeks on the ocean shooting that last hour, and it was not forgiving. And They spent a lot of time getting the crap kicked out of them off East Beach of Chappaquiddick. Finally, they had taken enough abuse, and everybody was seasick and, filling the water with chum over the side of the boat. And they finally went to Cow Bay. And in Cow Bay, they spent some time shooting some Orca sequences. It was a little bit more protected, not in the open ocean, but in a bay. And then finally, they decided that they would shoot the combat sequence with the shark between Roy Scheider's character, Chief Brody, and the shark inside Katama Bay, which is completely surrounded by land on all sides. And so they basically, I think they were battle weary from being on the boat that long, and said, let's get inside a nice calm bay and shoot these last sequences that were the most technically challenging also.
Wow, so it was really a challenge throughout the whole process, huh? The whole thing was, well, that's what it takes to get high-tech stuff going on back in the 70s, huh? I mean, really. Yeah, they were basically pioneers in creating this animatronic shark that, didn't work, but only because they were told, Jaws was rushed. Jaws was forced by the studios into production because the book was doing really well. It was on the top 10, it was on the bestseller list for the New York Times. The studio wanted to get while the iron was hot. So let's get this movie done and in the can before the book is leaving the top 10 list. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
I got to revisit Jaws. I haven't watched that thing in a long time, but so fast forward now 45 years. What have you been doing in the middle? You're not working in the film world. You went and got a real job and went to college and did the whole bit. And now you're circling back to Jaws.
Well, I did get a real job, but I am working in media. So I got a job in television and cinema. I've worked on films. I've worked on concert tours doing video.
Nice.
I've worked on commercials and advertising. So Jaws did influence me. It was the beginning of an influence that all this time, 25 years after starting my career in college in broadcasting and media, I'm still in it today. And so I'm actually right now a online editor and colorist at WGBH in Boston, which is one of the PBS stations. And one our main clients are Frontline, the documentary news program, and Nova, the science series, and American Experience. Other clients, my role is basically to take any finished documentary, make it look its best, and get it ready for air. And so that's something I've got a lot of experience in the post-production area. But, leading up to this, I've got a lot of time behind the camera. I've written scripts. I've worked with talent. So I do have a good amount of a breadth of knowledge about what it takes to be in media production. So I definitely, I was influenced by the film and all the other films, and it made me choose a career that's aligned with this.
Right.
So 45 years later, I am now in a position to do something with my memories and what I basically have looked at as one of the pinnacle experiences that started me on this path in the first place. And I decided about 2.5 years ago, I was going to engage forward on a project called Making the Monster. And Making the Monster is a 6-episode docudrama series, sort of like Apollo 13 for the making of Jaws. Instead of Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon playing the roles of the crew of the Apollo craft, I've got people playing Joe Alves and Roy Arbogast and Bob Matty, the guys who made the shark, actors portraying them.
Nice.
And so the idea is that, people talked about this being a feature film. Maybe you could do this as a movie. And I said, sure. But when you look at the 6-month production of Jaws and all the stories that went into what it took to create that film, you'd lose a lot of information in a feature film of 2 hours in length.
Yeah, that's probably true.
An episodic series, meanwhile, set over 6 months of production, can really get you into knowing the characters, knowing the struggles they went through, and have enough time to deal with most of the problems and understand what the challenges on Jaws were, which I believe in the larger consciousness in our culture, people only know the tip of the iceberg of the problems in that film. There were so many problems that don't even get mentioned in the documentaries
Pandora's
about the making of Jaws. Right. It really was, the fact that we got a movie made out of the production of Jaws was a miracle. The fact that we got a blockbuster film that people consider to be one of their favorites 45 years later is more than a miracle in my mind. I think that there was an incredible lightning in a bottle moment that occurred with the making of Jaws. And some of the things, even Spielberg admits, had he had things working the way he wanted and showed more of the shark, he might have made a worse film. He created that mystique around the shark, that foreboding sense of fear of the unknown, what you can't see.
Right.
And that's really creative to think about. Don't see the shark. And then Alien comes out 5 years or 4 years later in 79, basically uses the same technique.
Right.
They could have showed that alien all the time. But, Ridley Scott says, Jaws set the mold here. We basically have a film where we need to create tension, and not seeing the aggressor is the best way to do that.
That's a good point. Yeah, now that we're 45 years down the road, we can really, hindsight's 2020. But Spielberg might know what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to say now, but that is very true, because a lot of times that can be even more daunting to the unknown is wow. So the making of the monster is going to be a 6-part series. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And
yes.
And when is that? When are you dropping the first one?
We'd love to drop it as soon as we're ready to. The problem is that COVID-19 has basically waylaid all of our plans to be in production. Very few people are shooting right now and moving forward on getting their projects developed and turned over to networks for airing. It's been a real problem for so many people, and we are just doing our best to bide our time to keep moving the project forward. We have a lot of development that we're doing, and for people who aren't familiar in the industry, pre-production development is basically everything that it takes to get ready for camera: the script writing, the casting, the location securing, the rental of the gear, renting editing space when you're going to be done with the production and actually get into editing. So for a series, our budgeted projections are pretty high. We're in the $45 million range for shooting 6 hours of television. And we have relationships with people who are capable of doing this, but we can't release that information right now. So it's a very large beast. Joe Alves and other people from the production are completely on board. They have given their releases. They've been interviewed for this project. I've spent probably a good 6-7 weeks of time in basically getting all these interviews for research purposes. But we'll be using these interviews in our show, kind of like Band of Brothers did open their show with bookends of, knowing the actual survivors of,
right.
of the company,
Yeah.
and seeing them for real. And so we want to start every episode of Making the Monster with some actual Jaws crew members talking about their experiences. And then we now go into the dramatic recreations with the actors playing their roles.
And how's the response been from those folks? I know you mentioned a couple there on board and signed the releases, but have you heard from Richard at all, or any of the actors or anything that had big roles in it that they might do a little pop in?
Well, Richard's the only surviving actor
from
the making of Jaws. Yeah, Roy Scheider passed away, I believe, in 2006 or so, or 7. Robert Shaw passed within 5 years of the end of Jaws.
Okay.
He was, he had a heart attack and died, and was left behind an incredible career, and a son actually who is his age today, the age that Robert was when he was in Jaws. And his son, Ian Shaw, is now acting in a play called The Shark is Broken, which, once the COVID lets him allows him back in to doing a stage play, is basically set aboard the Orca and based on his father's journals that he kept while he was shooting
So
Jaws.
Did he write that then?
Yes, he wrote that.
Wow. That's interesting. So the COVID's got everything screwed up, but there's a pretty serious underground following of the Jaws, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I said when we started the interview, there's a lot of people who just keep this film in the current culture and the mindset of, even with COVID and the virus, the memes that are going around the internet about how the shark is the virus and the mayor of Amity is the country trying to reopen and get the economy going again. The parallels are drawn every time. And the film just turned 45 on June 20th. And people, they enjoy it by watching the film again. They have screenings in different places. There's this summer, Jaws and Jurassic Park were released in drive-in theaters to go up against each other. And Jurassic Park did better.
Yeah.
But Jaws did pretty well too. And they were the top grossing films this summer.
Wow.
2 films from Spielberg that have been both out more than 20 years. So.
Well, Jurassic Park was long after, wasn't it? When did Jurassic Park come out?
Jurassic Park was 1993.
Yeah, so you probably had a little bit better technology and whatnot to go into that one. But that's interesting that they did that. And that was this summer here? Or was that last summer?
That was this summer. So drive-in theaters have had a resurgence because of COVID.
Yeah.
You can't go into a movie house, but you can pack into a car if you want and sit, 20 feet from other cars and so forth. So
I know some comedians have been doing drive-in theaters, doing tours of drive-in theaters and setting up a stage in front of the screen and doing their show, which, I don't know how they can afford to pay these comedians, but whatever. Everybody's got a way. So that's interesting. I think I can't remember the last time I saw Jaws, but you've got now you're working. Well, let's talk about this app. I just came across this thing. So you've got an app out called The Making of the Monster, and these are locations from the movie.
Yeah. So Making the Monster, our group has produced something called the Ultimate Jaws Location Guide. And the Ultimate Jaws Location Guide is basically a 3D Google Earth 3D map that you can use to look at any of the locations that were used on the making of Jaws, Jaws 2, and Jaws the Revenge. So we've included basically as comprehensive a list as we can of all the locations that were found on Martha's Vineyard and in Los Angeles that were used on the production of Jaws or these other sequels. And we provided it free to the world because we simply want people to have a great tool to go to Martha's Vineyard if they want, go and find the locations. Where was Brody's police station? Where was the tiger shark hung up? Where is the Brody house? The house where Mrs. Brody says, "I want my cup back," after Brody takes off to go see the first. So all these places, we have 80 plus locations on our location guide.
Wow.
With photography that Jim Beller is the #1 Jaws memorabilia collector in the United States. And basically he provided photos nobody's ever seen before of the making of Jaws, and they're part of this location guide. So we've been doing very well. We released it this spring in April, and it's gotten around the web quite quickly. And particularly during COVID and everybody's lockdown, people were just surfing the heck out of that thing, looking at all the locations.
So it's had a great response, huh?
Very good response.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's a free resource, which I think people just, we are Jaws fans, and we love to talk to other Jaws fans. And so this was a gift that we had to the world. We could have probably sold access, but we chose that we just wanted to provide this to people. And if you go to the vineyard, you can pull it up on your phone and then see where you are and see where you are in relationship to the other locations and just navigate over to them.
Are there a lot of them still there the way they were then? I suppose there's been a lot of, growth and changes that have happened over the last 40 years that some of the locations may be not what you thought they were.
Interestingly enough, Martha's Vineyard doesn't change that much.
Oh, really?
It's a traditional New England town that really appreciates and values its quaintness as a community. So, frankly, if you go to Martha's Vineyard, you will see the locations very, very similarly to the way they appear in the film.
Really?
It's really incredible to see. It's not completely frozen in time of 1974. But it's very close.
Wow.
And some things have changed. Some businesses have gotten more modern. But luckily, it's not an urban environment. It's, like I said, this tiny little community that really kind of values its white picket fences and its gray shingled shacks. And even if you go today to Menemsha, where Quint's shack was, where the Orca was docked before they take off, the three characters, Brody, Quint, and Hooper, take off for the fight with the shark. You'll see basically a harbor that looks almost identical to what it looked like back in 1974. The only thing that isn't there is Quint's shack. They had to tear that down.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is there, and it looks, there's more modern boats pulled in there, but it's still Quint's harbor, and you'll see exactly that when you go.
How often are you going out there?
Every weekend.
Really?
Yes.
For work,
well, especially
or just for getaway?
I go there now because of our other project, the Return of the Orca.
Oh,
and
yes.
We're basically, it's a full-time job on the weekends for me to shepherd this project into existence, of taking this vessel that we purchased, the Lydia, and converting her into the Orca 3.
So is the Lydia just the same style of boat, or is it an actual boat from the movie?
Yeah, it's a style of boat that is called a Nova Scotia lobster boat.
Okay.
And these are work boats basically that are made, and they weren't made particularly in terms of like a make and model. The Nova Scotia lobster boats tend to be a style that are made basically on the shores of northeastern Massachusetts and all the way up to Nova Scotia, Maine, New Hampshire, those coastlines. And they're made to be work boats. So nobody really created a boat that was like, this is the model that you get to make the Orca. They found a boat that was in this Nova Scotia lobster boat style, and they converted it. So we had to find a boat that was as similar to the Orca and what it started as, what was called the Warlock. And our challenge is find a boat that's close enough that we can convert into the Orca 3. The reason it's the Orca 3 is because the Orca 1 was the actual sailing vessel that you see in the movie that is underway and moving at 15 knots, chasing the shark. The Orca 2 was a fiberglass duplicate of that Orca built just for sinking. So they could sink it and raise it hydraulically with barrels in the hull. So that, when they film that scene when Scheider is on the sinking Orca and the shark is trying to kill him, and he finally, is up on top of the crow's nest, they needed that boat to sink and raise and sink and raise to reset and take those shots over and over. So our boat is the Orca 3. It will be the only Orca since the 2. And we haven't had any Orcas in over almost 25 years because the other 2 have been destroyed. So there are no other Orcas on the planet as far as we know. Anybody, has made any. I know
Right.
that there are some projects out there that people are want to do this, but so far we're some of the only ones that actually have dedicated plans and an actual delivery date of this fall to have that boat in the water.
So do you have a schematic from the movie on what was in that boat, or are you just going off of, looking at the film and saying, all right, so we should do this and we should do that, or are there actual blueprints to the boat to explain what was done to it?
Great question. We have everything we need in terms of blueprints that were made by Joe Alves back in 1974. We have his original blueprints that he handed off to Chris Crawford, who will be working on this boat. And we have 3D models that basically people have made incredible reproduction models of the Orca that are smaller in scale, obviously, might be, 4 feet long, but are so detailed that we can basically work over them as a team and figure out exactly what we need to do to make this boat match the original. So lots of intel, plenty of intel to be able to do these plans from.
Wow, and you've got a GoFundMe page going to try and help raise some funds so that you can accomplish this mission, right? Tell us about that.
Well, the original Making the Monster did get some seed money through friends and family of mine that knew that I was involved in making this project come to life. And there was some money raised, which was great. Wasn't a widespread campaign in any way. The project Return of the Orca is going to be a much larger campaign. And so as of this announcement, if you go to returnoftheorca.com, you can become a member of our team on Indiegogo and be provided the opportunity to what we call come aboard. And what we're doing is that we are building the boat, and we are looking at both private investment that we've already secured some relationships in, but we also are giving away some great perks, some gifts for people who are willing to donate to the production of the Orca and the team effort that we're going to have working on the boat. We're going to make a documentary film about the production so that people can get a Blu-ray of that. We have incredible T-shirts, posters, lots of really incredible gifts, access to a video production diary that will be kept on a daily basis while we're working on the boat. So there'll be all sorts of things. We even are talking about including hats with our logo that was designed by Eric Hollander. So it's a very, very large campaign. One thing that I decided that we would do and talk to this group is we have partnered with a group called the Daily Jaws, which is one of the largest online Jaws fan publications on the internet today. And they have a veritable reach of over 3 million followers.
Wow.
Who they'll be putting the word out with as well. So we are going to do a dedicated media campaign. Appearing on your show is part of that campaign.
Sure.
Talking to others, getting the word out. The purpose of this boat, though, the important thing is to know is we don't just want to make a boat for our television show. We've got a whole nother reason to be doing this. We partnered with Beneath the Waves. It's a research nonprofit in marine conservation that Wendy Benchley is on the chair of, and we're going to provide a research platform for people to operate from Beneath the Waves on the Orca 3 and learn more about the shark problem we have on the Cape and Islands, because we have a large shark problem now in this area.
Right.
Life has imitated art. And education is the only tool that people have in this area to understand how to be safe about interacting with the coast and sharks. There's no getting rid of the seals. There's hundreds of thousands of seals all over these islands and the surrounding area that are attracting the sharks. Climate change has warmed up the waters enough that the sharks now feel really comfortable being here to eat their seals.
Sure.
And we have had a fatality. We had the first attack in 80 years, 2 years ago, that killed someone off of Wellfleet Beach on Cape Cod.
Really?
So it's a real problem, and it's going to get worse because the trend doesn't show any kind of change towards the sharks leaving anytime soon. If anything, they're growing in number. So we want the Orca 3 to be a platform for learning about that and for allowing there to be much more understanding and harmony between people and sharks living in this area. I think that's the only thing we can do is tell people what the real situation is. Right. And hopefully that will be enough to get, some safety and maybe a little bit of just good understanding about what the marine environment is all about.
Are they attributing a lot of that additional sharks to like a global warming situation?
Yeah, it's a combination of the warming. The seals have been protected. We can't hunt the seals and reduce their numbers and cull them. So we are basically stuck with a situation where the seals are in large numbers and breeding. One of the biggest breeding grounds of seals in the United States is right off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. There are more seals born there than anywhere else in the country. So yes, we have a shark problem, and it's not going away because we're only filling the pot with more food for the sharks.
Yeah, right.
And, so and I was on the vineyard this past weekend. You might see me looking pretty tan here. And I was there, and there were 5-6 seals that we saw on the beach that we were at. And the moment you see seals in the water, you do not go in.
Really?
You do not risk going into. That's where sharks are after seals.
Oh man,
and
it's like chum. Bringing them in. Wow.
So
all right.
I've never been afraid to go in the water there. I am now afraid to go in the water on Martha's Vineyard.
You'll be fine. You just got to outswim them. That's it.
Yeah.
See, there it is. There's the fear. You can't see anything. So that's what scares you, is you don't know what's under there. Except the big fat seal bait. What about so they're going to use the Orca 3 for research and to try and get a thumb on this shark problem. What else are you going to do with it? You gonna do some kind of a little tour thing or something?
Well, that's we definitely want to be able to offer tours to people who just want to enjoy being on the Orca again. When you go to Martha's Vineyard, and there are a lot of Jaws fans who simply go to the vineyard to enjoy seeing the locations, hopefully using our Ultimate Jaws location guide, that you want to have a pretty full experience of getting your Jaws fix in. So we think the Orca 3 would be one of these really great offerings if people want to go see the locations and then have a sunset tour on the Orca 3 and go out and maybe see some sharks. Who knows? I can't think of any better way to sort of immerse yourself in the world of Jaws than to be on the boat from the movie in shark-infested waters, and we're obviously not going to be lowering anybody into any cages to take any great whites on. But, I think that it would be a great thing. The truth is that the second part of our mission that's more important to us is being able to provide free rides to kids in certain charities on the vineyard. I grew up on the vineyard. I have a great deep connection to the island, and I want to be able to give back in a way I think that would be really efficacious to people. And one of those camps named Camp Jabberwocky, it's a disabled kids camp with a variety of different disabilities. We want to be able to offer free trips for those kids to be able to go out and enjoy the ocean.
Oh, right.
It's one of these things. Again, the mission of the boat should not be strictly for commerce. We want it to be a tool for enriching people's lives and creating greater awareness about things. And so those two, basic tenets of our mission for the Orca 3 are the highest priority. But it needs to be a self-sustaining vessel. And so a self-sustaining vessel needs to have income.
Right.
And so we will be offering the tours, and we will be, and Martha's Vineyard has a relatively short season. We're New England, we're just below Maine. So, Memorial Day to Labor Day is pretty much our season, and maybe a little bit into October, because it does stay warm here for a while after, Labor Day.
You got to make it fast. Oof, that's not a long time.
No. But we feel like, we can basically set up an operation that the boat goes into winterization in the winter and gets tucked away, and comes back out in the spring to do her job and continue with the research, continue with the kids tours for Camp Jabberwocky and the tours for people who want to enjoy the Orca. We see it being possible to self-sustain. But the initial campaign to get the boat in the water, to have it properly built, have all the fixings of what make it Orca, that's one thing we want to do as a community. And we have, again, a great team. Joe Alves, Chris Crawford made the original Orca. They're going to be making this one. Excuse me.
That's so cool.
Lot of we're treating it the way it should be treated, and we're going to keep it on Martha's Vineyard, Amity, as everybody knows, who knows Jaws. And we want it to be another fixture on the island that can be something people feel good about having there.
Is there anything, I haven't been out there, is there anything out there now? Like if you were whatever, a 20-something who knows nothing about Jaws, and you show up to Martha's Vineyard, is there any signage or any anything currently about Jaws there? Anywhere?
Yeah, there's lots of shops will be selling Jaws T-shirts. There's a place called Jaws Bridge. They have T-shirts called "I Jumped Off Jaws Bridge" because people jump off the bridge into the water. There is I believe you will see Amity, the name of the fictional town from the film, used in certain signage. This 45th anniversary we just had, there was supposed to be a huge museum exhibit of Jaws objects and stories from people who worked on the film, but COVID stopped that. And so what would have been a really great anniversary for the film on the island and a big celebration was basically postponed until the 50th anniversary 5 years from now. So, but yes, if you go to the vineyard, you will see some Jaws things, and you can certainly hire a number of tour companies to take you on Jaws tours. Or you can rent a car and use our location guide and be able to take yourself around to those. But we always recommend a tour only because driving on the vineyard for the first time is it's tight roads, not a lot of parking if you're there in the high season. So definitely take a tour, but you can still use your location guide. To be able to do that.
Wow. So, fascinating stuff. That's very interesting. I'm going to have to make my way out there. It's on the list, but it's not been too high on the list as of late. So what's the timeline on all this stuff to get the Orca going? And obviously the production on the docuseries is at a halt because of the COVID. But the boat, you can get into that now, can't you? That doesn't care if you have the virus or not, does it?
No, and then the crew size for building the boat is relatively small. So we do have the opportunity here with proper precautions to engage building the boat. Our capital campaign starts on the 18th, which just happened, and it will go on for just over a month. So we plan to be soliciting and spreading the word about the project, looking to secure our goal of funding. And then in August, mid-August, we're going to have that boat sitting in a barn, ready to be worked on by a crew that will hopefully have it in the water in 6 to 8 weeks. So we're looking at basically a October launch of the boat, and be able to have a public event where we basically christen the boat and get it in the water. People can witness its maiden voyage. And we're working on a couple special guests that we might be able to have be at the island for that boat launch. People you'll recognize from the film.
That's awesome.
So that's something that we're hoping to be able to do as well. But our main concern right now is garnering support from the community, the Jaws community around the world, make it possible to have this boat in the water, fulfill the mission that we want in both research and charity, and providing Jaws fans a really great experience for themselves. And once we get there, then we'll take on phase 2 and figure out what to do next. But we're really excited. I think it's going to be a great thing for people to be a part of. I know that, Wendy Benchley, who we've brought on board as a consultant on the project and supports it, feels like it is the way Jaws should evolve from a movie about killing sharks to a movie about understanding, or a project about understanding sharks.
Full circle.
And doing some good in the world.
I like it. Well, tell us again how people can find information about what you got going on and the direction to that deal so they can go donate some money or get involved. Give us those addresses again, please.
Certainly. So if you go to www.returnoftheorca.com, all one word, lowercase, that'll take you to our landing page, and that will give you a link to the Indiegogo campaign where you can learn about the project, see all the information we have to share with you, what it is that you will get for your donation to the project. It's pretty self-explanatory. We don't want to make it complicated. We do have Facebook accounts for Return to the Orca, Twitter, Instagram. All of these different social media sites will all be part of a combined, comprehensive campaign. So if you Google search Return to the Orca, by the time you hear this, hopefully you'll just be coming across everything. But definitely shoot on over to returntotheorca.com and you'll get plugged right in.
Sure, and we'll have a link to all that on our site and on the podcast site. So it'll definitely be something to check out. Well, I'm excited to see what you do with it. It sounds like a fun, exciting project, and we're going to have to check in on you down the road to see just how it's going. Maybe unveil the big announcement of who's coming to town for the launch of the big Orca 3. That's super cool. Well, David, we can't thank you enough for all the time, man. We will definitely steer everybody we can towards your project, and best of luck to you, man. It sounds like a fun little adventure, and hopefully someday when I do get there, the boat will be there and I can use my app. Tell me how to get around town. I love it. That's so cool. Well, thanks again, man, and we'll check in with you somewhere down the road.
Great. Thank you very much, Darren.
All right, man. That's it. That's the end.
That's a wrap.
Read the shtick.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and tell all your friends. If you'd like to reach out, you can use the studio line at 612-504-6500 or by email, thedkprojectpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, there's always social media at the DK Project Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.